Chris, what is our second main topic today?
Our second topic comes from Box Office Fan. More on the crazy Bob Iger and Bob Chapek drama. It's getting reported from people at Disney that Iger picked for Chapek as the new CEO was not liked by some in Disney who didn't want Chapek as CEO. Iger calls Chapek his biggest mistake, and he wishes he had stayed during the virus to run Disney. Iger says he purportedly viewed Chapek as, quote, arrogant and uninterested in other people's opinions.
Damn.
This is some crazy stuff. The Bobs don't like each other.
All right, thanks for sending that in, Box Office Fan. And look, this is interesting. Now, look, everybody knows that while I was very much in the corner of Bob Chapek when they hired him, it's a pick that made sense on paper. I was all for it. I have come as a Disney fan to really regret the fact that they have hired Bob Chapek, to the degree that I have not been a fan of his handling of the company up until now. That doesn't mean I'm not cheering for him to turn the boat around and to learn some lessons. Again, how many times have we said he took over the job under the worst circumstances in the history of corporate America? I mean, he couldn't have taken over Disney in any worse circumstances. So you got to cut him some slack on that. I've said that for a long time, but I'm not a particularly big fan of the way he's managed this company. And we've gone into that into exhausting detail before. We've also known that Bob Chapek and Bob Iger had a falling out and that the two no longer speak. Some say they were actually at a some kind of moguls retreat at one point, and they said hello to each other, and that was it. And they were like, and they stopped communicating with each other. Even while Bob Iger was still chairman at Disney, they just had a massive rift, never went anywhere. Well, now Business Insider, via the New York Post, is now saying it goes even further than that. That even before leaving his position as the chairman of the board of Disney, Bob Iger completely regretted his decision in tapping Bob Chapek to be his successor. This comes to us from the folks over the New York Post who wrote the following. Ex-Disney boss Bob Iger is still reportedly unhappy about the way the Mouse House handled his exit and considers naming his current CEO, Bob Chapek, as his successor, one of his quote-unquote worst business decisions. Iger, who stepped down as Disney CEO in early 2020, just before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, came to regret his decision as the scope of the challenge facing the company became clear, according to the report. Iger quickly chafed at Chapek's leadership style and reportedly found his successor to be a quote-unquote novice in responding to talent management concerns, which is obvious, and politics-adjacent disputes. Iger also purportedly viewed Chapek as arrogant and uninterested in other people's opinions. This, of course, comes to us from the New York Post. Okay. There's a couple of thoughts I have here. First, let me preface it by saying this. Everybody knows I'm a huge Papa Iger fan. I have now read his book. I've taken his masterclass on one of our sponsors, Masterclass. Go check them out. Numerous times. I am a huge fan of his. He is the man. That being said, the reality is Bob Chapek is the CEO of Disney now. And back a while ago, I think it was about a month ago, when we discussed the fact that one of Disney's heirs was trying to mount an opposition to Bob Chapek's salary, we said at the time on this show, there is no way the board is going to cut Bob Chapek's salary, because that would make it look like the board doesn't have confidence in their CEO. And if it looks like the board doesn't have confidence in the CEO, that will hurt stock price. The shareholders will be unhappy. And I said, there's no way they're going to cut his salary. No way. So obviously they did, with his 3-year contract up, they renewed it for another 3 years. No surprise. We all knew that was going to happen. They had to. But at this point, it is incredibly juicy to hear that Bob Iger has regretted the decision almost from day one. Because I regret his decision too.
Juicy.
I also regret his decision. Right. I also regret the decision that he made. But at this point, it's done. Now, at this point, while it is the job of people like me who are pundits and commentators on the industry to praise and be critical of each little step that happens, yes. But now, if you're on Disney's side, if you're Bob Iger, whatever, none of this coming out is particularly constructive. I mean, it does paint a clear picture. Look, at this point, I will say that Bob Iger was wrong in selecting Bob Chapek to be CEO. People like me were wrong who said this was a good pick. It hasn't worked out to be all that great. It just hasn't. And I will still keep fingers crossed that the doom of, also the article in Business Insider goes on to talk about specifically the way Bob Chapek reorganized the leadership there, which was completely counter to the culture that Bob Iger had set up, which was a culture that gave more authority and decision-making power to the creatives. Bob Chapek stepped in and stripped that power away and instead put business suits in charge over creatives. And that has hurt a lot of things. So it is what it is. I'm not surprised to hear it, but it doesn't really change anything at this point. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Storyblocks. Guys, I have been an enthusiastic fan and user of Storyblocks for years. I go to them whenever I'm in need of content creation assets like royalty-free music, video clips, or templates for my creative projects, ranging anywhere from little editorial videos to my very own full-feature documentary. Storyblocks helps you bring your stories, videos, and projects to life without sacrifices due to time, budget, or access to resources. They have over 1 million different story assets ranging from stock videos, audio and music, an in-browser video editor, and they feature pre-designed templates, animations, and outros. Storyblocks uses an affordable subscription model, and their unlimited access plans offers, well, unlimited video and audio downloads rather than a costly pay-per-clip model. With Storyblocks, you'll be able to create more content and, more importantly, better content, all while using a subscription plan that fits your budget, utilizing unlimited downloads of demand-driven and diverse content. So if you're interested in upping your content creation game, head over to www.storyblocks.com/Campea and get started today. That's www.storyblocks.com/Campea. Anyway, Chris, you hear about Iger now saying he regrets the decision. He thinks it's the worst decision he ever made, business-wise. What is your takeaway from this?
Well, I'm really glad you brought up the structural upheaval here, because honestly, going into his tenure here, Chapek had a lot against him, right? We had COVID-19. We've had a lot of political issues that have come up as well. And a lot of that is stuff that anyone would have struggled with, right, given the position. However, those changes of putting suits in place of creative work have really, really just bit him in the ass time and time again. And that's where Bob Iger really, really was amazing, right? Listening to people who had creativity, who had a vision, who knew what they wanted to do, and add magic into stuff at Disney. Magic is the proponent of everything at Disney. Why would you take it away? And Chapek just really doing a very kind of nickel and dimed business approach to everything has not panned out and has really, really hurt the culture of that company as well. I mean, whenever we hear somebody saying that they're not happy about this, it's tens of thousands of people, it feels like, are all on the same page of, gosh, Bob Chapek really is kind of just screwing the pooch here from an internal affairs situation. So it makes sense that Iger would be disappointed in how everything has shaken out, especially since they had such a personal falling out as well. It's very interesting to me that he would be publicly stating this now. I don't know. It feels a little like, girls, you're both pretty. We don't need to fight. But I'm interested to see what he wants out of publicly saying this about Chapek now. You know what I mean? I'm not sure what the value is in also being like, yeah, I agree. He is a douche.
Unless he's setting himself up to come back as daddy. Don't worry, everybody. Daddy's going to come make it all better, which is what, Rob, additionally to what Chris was saying, there wasn't probably a better corporate environment than Pixar for a long time. And for the last year and a bit, all we've been hearing coming out of Pixar is that creatively, a lot of people feel despondent. They feel like they're on the outside now, the way that Disney has managed Pixar. The Pixar employees are upset with the way their films and the projects have been handled. There's been an exodus of people leaving Pixar. I don't know. You hear these comments from Bob Iger. What's your takeaway from this?
Well, what's strange to me is that Bob Chapek has always been a Disney corporate animal, and their corporate structure has always been something he existed in. I've never met him, but during the days I worked on Disney special features in the early aughts, Bob Chapek was very well thought of in home video circles because Disney Home Video was such a vibrant part of the company, and with Pixar and all that. So Chapek was a great guy when it came to, but what he didn't have any of, especially when you read Bob Iger's book. I mean, Bob Iger meeting people like Frank Sinatra, he had experiences with talent and understood how show business worked in terms of relationships that talent has. I mean, so much of show business is who you know and how you know them and handshake deals. And Bob Chapek has none of that. And as we've brought Lucasfilm into the fold, and as we brought Marvel into the fold, and we still have Pixar, all of those creative relationships are incredibly important to Disney because the results of those creative endeavors are what fuel everything else. The theme parks, all that stuff. And it always seems strange to me that I understand that probably within the Disney corporate structure, Chapek was at the top. It was his turn. Like he was heir apparent if all what you're looking at is Disney corporate. But no one has Bob Iger's handshake man appeal, that Machiavellian kind of, let me broker this deal. Let me fix this problem. Let me sacrifice John Carter so I can get Star Wars. You know, I mean, Bob Iger's the man who could do that. Chapek was not. And I think that Chapek was thrown into it wasn't that he was thrown into a swimming pool he'd never been swimming in before. and that was the problem. He wasn't thrown into the deep end of a pool. He was thrown into a pool that waters he'd never swam. And you can't expect a person like that to suddenly like, oh, let me handle this Scarlett Johansson situation. Let me handle what's going on here. Like, we screwed you over, screwed your movie over. We're not going to release it, the way we were supposed to. And you have a deal, but let's cause a public feud between one of our biggest stars. Those are huge missteps, and they just keep happening. And I can understand why Bob Iger's like, I'm frustrated.
Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you make of this? Bob Iger, it's coming out now that Bob Iger feels that tapping Bob Chapek to be his heir apparent was the worst business decision he's ever made. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that at this point? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there.